we have here, it's not a big networking thing. Oh, here's Sergio. Good. Okay. So why don't we, I don't, if you can hear us, you want to introduce yourself, Pam? And I'm taking the liberty of calling you Pam. If you want to introduce yourself to the other people that are here, we have a couple of other participants. And Sergio, do you want to introduce yourself?
They're still connecting.
You're still connected.
I'm here. This is Pam.
Hi,
Can you
Pam.
hear me?
Yes.
Hi. Gardeners out here blowing around, so hopefully you can hear me.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm Pam Brown Schachter, and I am the new council member and the City of Rolling Hills Estates.
Great.
Wonderful.
Thank you so much for coming.
Mhm.
And Sergio, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hello, everyone. My name is Sergio Carrillo, and I work for newly elected LA City Council member Tim McCosker, and I will be working with him and all of you. So I look forward to meeting you, working with you, and yeah. So thank you.
Thank you. Did you get my email today about the alternate issue?
I did. Thank you so much.
Okay.
We are gonna look into that and figure out.
Get back to me. Yeah. Okay. If the issue is whether they need an alternate at all. Jocelyn, introduce yourself.
I was like, is she gonna, she almost got it.
Our minds thinking very quickly.
I'm Jessalyn Waldron. I represent Supervisor Mitchell in the coastal areas of the second district of LA County, including the beach cities. There's 3 of us in our office that have parts of the South Bay. Alfonso's our representative that attends the board meetings, but I kind of wanted to attend this to learn some of the basics because I'm still fairly new. So
Okay. So am I controlling this? No, who's controlling?
I'm controlling the screen.
Okay. Okay.
Do you want us to introduce you?
Oh, yes, I suppose we should introduce ourselves. Well, I'm Jackie Backrack, and I think you all know me. The Executive Director. David, do you want to introduce yourself?
David Lashir, I manage the Measure R&M grant programs, work on the local travel network project, staff board meetings, and a little bit of everything else.
And I'm Kim Fuentes. I'm Jackie's deputy, and I run the Environmental Services Center and all the environmental programs.
Okay, so why don't we move on to the next slide? And I've got a lot of slides, and I hope that you'll interrupt if you have a question. So first of all, what's a sub-regional government? It's not really a local government. It's not a regional government. It's something that it is a government agency, but it's voluntary. It's completely voluntary. Cities have done this to be collaborative and to work together on projects that they can work better separately than they can. I mean, they work better together than they can separately. And so we coordinate our action. We are also, and we've become very valuable for this reason. Hi.
Hi, Jack.
Justin.
How are you?
Fine, thanks. We just got started.
I'm sorry, I'm late.
Do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Justin Massey. I'm the Mayor Pro Tem of Hermosa Beach.
Great. Glad to see you. So what I was just saying is, what is a COG? And a COG is what's happened even more than it used to is we're a single point of contact for other agencies. They can come to us and we will contact our cities. So it makes it a lot easier for other agencies. And then I think it's really important to know that if you know one COG, you know only one COG. We all have completely separate identities and priorities. We really reflect the area that we're in. And we also we try to coordinate for the cities responses to RENA, to the Regional Transportation Plan. So let's move forward. Justin, what you don't know that on the screen is a new council member from Rolling Hills Estates, Pam Brown Schachter, and Sergio Carrillo is working for Tim McCosker in Los Angeles.
Great.
Okay. So this is pretty much what I just said again. We think we're more efficient than some of the larger organizations. We're able to lobby for the area and we're able to build consensus. Next slide. There are when I said when you know one COG, you know one COG. These are the other COGs. If you see, there's 3 biggies. We're one of the big ones, and then they completely drop off to 5 or less. And so we work very closely on a lot of issues with San Gabriel Valley and Gateway. And you'll also see that some of the COGs, because we're called Council of Governments, they have other governments besides cities. What's not down here is Orange County actually for a while had school district representatives. School districts would elect somebody to sit on the COG board so they could be a council of governments. And we've discussed that sometimes in the past, but the board has never really wanted to do that. So it's always open to discussion. Next slide. So these are all the regional agencies we deal with, and I realized after I put this up that we actually don't have, we have a new one here and we have one that I left out. The new one, you're gonna hear about this tonight at the board meeting, is the Baldwin Hills, number 9, Baldwin Hills Urban and Watershed Conservancy. We were put into legislation that we didn't know about, so now we have this new thing that I'm trying to get somebody to represent us on. But we also, the one I left off is there's an Aerospace Alliance. And we also have a representative to the Aerospace Alliance, which is, it's South Bay Association of Chambers, works very closely with us, and we protect the Air Force Base. We work on other air issues. So those are some of the, these are all of the different organizations that we try to interface with. Next slide. And then the associations with cities have, we really try not to conflict our meetings with these, but we don't have a very close relationship. We're not a member, and I guess I should have put STAG down there. Next slide. So here are the programs of the COG. If you go to our website, you'll see we've broken them up into 5 different categories, and we'll go through those categories sort of like they're here, but not exactly. Let's go to the next slide. So, and transportation and land use. Is everybody seeing that you are screen sharing thing?
It's on our end.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Good. Okay. So, and in transportation and land use, we receive money from Metro to do Measure R and M planning for the South Bay. And I don't know if you want, do you want to talk about briefly Measure RM?
Sure. So Measure R, we now have a highway program, which funds traditional road improvements, streetlights, turn lanes. And we recently created a couple years ago the Measure R South Bay Transit Investment Program, which is funding some transit capital projects. We have Measure M, which includes 3 sub-regional programs. Measure R has about $900 million. Most of it's been accounted for in some way or another. Measure M so far has about 300 million, but anticipates about a billion or so over 40 years. Measure R ends in 2039 and Measure M continues forever until voters repeal it. And in 2039, Measure M doubles in its number. So there'll be no net change in sales tax, but it'll go to all to Measure M at that point.
So we've done different projects on the street. You'll see some of them in your own communities that we funded in both Measure R and M. And every year we have a call for projects to see what the current cost of projects are if we have to help them and what new projects might be available. Sustainable neighborhood strategy is something we're focusing a lot on neighborhoods in the South Bay. We think we're in an area of neighborhoods. And so for years, we've done analysis of how people travel in the South Bay and land use strategies, and that's sort of permeated in a lot of everything we do. We're now looking at possibly getting funding to look at neighborhood centers where people could go and get better high-speed internet, 3D printing, doing things in their own neighborhood. We're trying to get some traction on that, find a location and do a pilot project on that. Telework, we way preceded COVID on telework. We think it's really important. In our own office, we hotel. We don't, there aren't desks for everybody. People have to reserve a desk if they want to work here. Metro pays us to just do a promotion of express lanes. We're not major proponents of them, or we don't have a position on express lanes, but we do promote the transponder. We don't give out transponders, but we can tell people what they're all about. On affordable housing, I'm going to get to that pretty much on the next slide. We do work with the cities when their housing allocations come out and try to see if we can support their efforts on that. We will be, I'll get that in the next slide. We're talking about a regional housing trust that we're going to be looking into. And all of these projects are partially supported by SCAG and Metro. So let's go to the next slide. We're now being funded by SCAG to do several different projects, which they call their REAP projects or early action projects, and they're to promote housing. And the REAP projects, we have all these different ones that we've done. We get about $585,000 for the REAP projects, and they last about 2 to 3 years. The first one is over. One of our cities asked us to do an SB 330 application. Apparently it was a new law. And instead of every city trying to figure out how to do this, we used some of this money to get a lawyer to sit down and do this application and then gave it to cities for them to use. That one's done. The other one we're doing is an ADU inventory and analysis. We have a consultant that's looking at several of our cities. Cities had to sign up, and I think Hermosa Beach is one of the cities. I can't remember. Rolling Hills Estates might be one of the cities. And we're looking at ADUs, how they're used, what the rents are, what the city requirements are, and we're going to be coming out with a handbook for cities, or I don't know if it's as formal as a handbook, but something that will help them identify where they are on the spectrum of, is it easy to build an ADU, is it isn't, what are the rent structure and things like that. We did have a survey, and although the survey results were not that great, they were better than apparently the state's results. So there you have it as far as what we did. That's going to be coming out, I guess, in the next couple of months. Commercial redevelopment to housing, we're working with a dynamic team, including Larry Cosmo, which you'll see his name in our stuff a lot. And they're looking at properties in the South Bay in selected cities, again, that might be commercially non-viable anymore, or at least susceptible to opportunities for housing. And then we have our housing education forums, which we're funding through this grant or through this funding. And our next one is February 2nd, and we're going to have a speaker from HCD. We did have somebody from Cosmo Associates talking about the housing market. We're going to try and have a lot of different aspects. If you have an idea, your new planning director, Carrie Tye, suggested that we do something from the developer's perspective on what causes it to pencil out for a developer. And so those are the kinds of things we want to have different formats. We're going to roll them out every 3 weeks or so. And you have to watch for the notices. Unfortunately, we wanted to make like every Thursday or every other Thursday, but we can't get speakers to confirm. So we can't tell you when the next one will be after February 2nd. So then REAP 2 is coming probably in June. It hasn't been approved yet, but we had legislation, which I'm sure Justin's very familiar with because a former council member from Hermosa Beach really helped us get this, for a housing trust. The issue with the housing trust is we did not do an analysis before we got the legislation on who would sit on the board, what kind of financial obligations the housing trust would take on. Would it be bonding? Would it be loans? Would it be grants? And so we are going to be using this money to get a consultant to work with us and a committee probably of the board to talk about how to form a housing trust, and also to determine which cities are interested, because we also didn't get a real analysis. Because we didn't have this analysis, we don't have the cities who have said that they will definitely join the housing trust. So we have to make that all clear. Second thing we're going to do with that money right now, and we might be able to change some of this if we get other ideas, but there is a tool that helps cities with commercial redevelopment that is very apparently difficult to use unless you're trained on it. So we're going to use the second tranche of money to train cities on how to use that tool. Next slide. I wanted to go into depth a little bit more on the local travel network, which is a unique thing that the South Bay is doing. We have looked at our trips, as I said, and how people travel in the South Bay. And what we found, and I think it's on a later slide, is that people do travel, 70% of our trips are 3 miles or less. So, and we have 287, something like that, 287,000 second, third, and fourth cars. So if everybody keeps their first car and we just figure out how to get rid of the third and the fourth, or the second, third, and fourth, that would do an incredible amount of help to our arterials, our congestion relief, and air quality. So we've designed a network, which was actually ridden by one of our staff members. It's 243 miles, and it provides safe routes on local streets for low-speed vehicles, or slow-speed vehicles, I should say. And we're going to use street markings and wayfinding signs for the network. So let's go to the next slide. Oh, great. See him?
He's joining.
Okay, so, but we can't see him.
It might not be on the screen, it might be on the second page.
I just want to say welcome to Councilman McCosker.
There you go.
Thank you. COVID seems to be treating you well. Oh, and here's Ray Jackson. Great. Wonderful. Okay, Ray Jackson is the mayor, right?
He is indeed.
Mayor of Hermosa Beach. And Tim McCosker is a newly elected council member in Los Angeles, and Pam Brown Schechter is a newly elected councilwoman in Rolling Hills Estates. And we have Jesslyn Waldron from District 2, Holly Mitchell's office. And then the rest of us are all COG staff who will be,
Oh, we have one more.
oh,
Hello, hello, hey, everybody, don't mind me, I'm just hanging out. I'm
All
not
right.
in the Space yet.
Mark Henderson from Gardena.
Right.
Great, okay, wonderful.
Hi.
We're gonna talk about, you've seen some of this, Mark. The local travel network. On the left is our local streets, and on the right are the 243 miles that we've connected. You'll see that some of them, and for example, San Pedro Wilmington, now that we have Councilman McCosker here, somewhat of an island, but we are working on connecting islands, and that we might have to have some dedicated connections for that. But we'll show you how it works. Next slide, or why it works, or what it is. These are the vehicles we're talking about. We're not talking about anything that, we're not talking about rentals. We're talking about things that people own. And I have pictures, we should probably put that up, of going to Costco over Christmas, and they had a couple of these vehicles there. You could buy it right off the shelf today. But people are reticent to buy them because there's not a lot of safe places they know to use them. And we've got, I don't know if we have one here, but a tricycle, for example, or cargo bikes, there's one, can be used for not only for goods movement, but for transit and for just simple errands and trips like that. So we think this is a 21st century look at mobility, and we want to promote it in the South Bay. Next slide. Why build it? And I presented this presentation to the California Transportation Commission, and they were very interested in this because it checks up all the state boxes. It's sustainable, it's accessible. These are vehicles that seniors can ride, as well as people that are under 21. I don't know if you're going to put your 12-year-old on it, but it's definitely good. There's slow speeds, so that people are not going to get, you're not going to get lost in West Hollywood or something. We've identified safe ways. We've identified safe ways. It's equitable because it addresses equity, because the vehicles are low cost, relatively low cost. And so we're talking about $1,500 to maybe $12,000 for these vehicles. And getting rid of that second, third, or fourth car. Congestion relief, these vehicles are not going on an arterial, and whatever you were going to take is now not going on that arterial. There are no cold starts for air quality, so it's also good for that. And then it's cost effective because it's not expensive for us to be doing this. Next slide. Okay, for residents, as I said, 70% of our trips are 3 miles or less, 90% actually are 10 miles or less. The speed is low speed. It's, as I said, I repeated a lot of this. It's equitable, it's low maintenance and low to no fuel, and it's your own door-to-door service. Next slide. Society benefits, as I said, it reduces congestion, improves air quality, GHG emissions, because these are all going to be zero emission vehicles. It not only is a first last mile way of getting to our transit system, but it also it can be microtransit, and we're working with microtransit firms to come into some of your communities to have, I think Manhattan Beach for a while had a shuttle that went around Manhattan Beach and people loved it. And so we're working with those people again to see if they want to reintroduce that to South Bay. Low infrastructure. And, if you're spending less on transportation, you can spend more on housing. So it addresses affordability as well. Next slide. I think I've addressed all of these things. Next slide. And then I saved this for the end. The board actually voted and approved this as the sign that would be throughout the South, the rolling.
Thank you.
And I didn't know what the reception was going to be when I presented it at Metro. Stephanie Riggins, who's the CEO, was like, "Oh my God, this is fantastic." When I presented it at the California Transportation Commission, one of the commissioners said, "Can we use that sign?" And I said, "Only if you use it on a local travel network. This is the sign." So we just approved it, and we hope to be seeing these throughout the South Bay. So I went into this specifically because it is a unique initiative of our COG, and I wanted to make sure that you saw this. But obviously, there's a lot more to say, and if you want a personal discussion on how this would work in your city, please let me know. Next slide. Another really a project that we're very, very proud of is our fiber network. We've connected all of the cities, except for the city of Los Angeles, city halls into a fiber network, and it includes LA County areas, Public Works, Beach Cities Health District, West Basin Municipal Water District, and
LA Biomed.
LA Biomed. And we're trying to, so we have telehealth, we have education, we have telemedicine. This is a high-speed network that we've created. This is the network. We call it a ring, and you have to be very flexible in what you think a ring is. But this is a ring, and it's got laterals, like down to, the easiest one to see is down to Rancho Palos Verdes. That goes to their city hall. So we created this ring. It's public-private. The public is really, we put in the laterals to the city halls, but it's really pieced together. The reason we were able to do it so rapidly is it's pieced together through leasing of private sector fiber. So, and when I say rapidly, in 2016, we decided there was a problem because we didn't have, a firm left Torrance and said they didn't have enough fiber. We did some studies, and in 2019, we broke ground. And we were able to get this going in 2020, right in the middle of COVID. So we're on to 3 years of this, 2.5 years of this network. The California caught up with us, and so did the US government. And there's now a lot of attention, especially after COVID, on digital equity, the digital economy. And so we have our network. We're hoping to expand it. We're hoping to put more into the disadvantaged communities. We want to work with your office, Jocelyn, about our neighborhood centers, for example. Really important, because we can take our network and we can bring it into a community and create a neighborhood center that's high tech, that could provide the community with telemedicine and all kinds of other resources if we can find a location to do that. The state has grants from the Public Utilities Commission. We just won a grant for $500,000. The RFP is on the street as of yesterday, to try, which will include a market assessment of what's going on in the South Bay, a needs assessment, and then some targeted areas in disadvantaged communities where we will look to expand the network. So we actually won an award for our network. We don't have it on this, but we got there was a crown that we used in all of our publicity because they used a crown to show us our award. Next slide. I wanted to mention the innovation, the way we got this done so fast. In order to buy or to lease this network, it was only going to be, if we had tried to build the network, it would have been years, and it would have been millions and millions of dollars. In order to lease the network, it was $6.9 million. And we get sub-regional funds from Measure M. And we went to Metro, and this was in 2019, 18, whatever, before COVID. And we said, fiber is a transportation expense. And they said, no, it isn't. And we said, yes, it is. And we had a big fight. And it wasn't until the board members essentially told the staff, we're going to fund this. We presented them with pages and pages of reasons why you need fiber for next bus signs, you need fiber for automated vehicles, you need fiber for signalized sync, signal sync, and all kinds of stuff, that they finally were able to fund us the $6.9 million. So we at the COG paid that $6.9 million, no cost to cities at all. Then the monthly cost is, as you see here, 1 gigabit, 2 gigabit, or 10 gigabit. We had cities paying over $4,000 for less than a gigabit. So it was also a no-brainer to join our network because they immediately saved money. So we're very, very proud of this network, and we only hope it can grow and grow. Next slide. Next is one of the, after I went through all of those huge projects, one of our hugest projects is our Environmental Services Center. And it provides tremendous amount of goodwill for the Council of Governments and funding and real benefit to our cities. And Kim, do you want to do this?
Sure. I think also what makes it unique is that we have utility partners. So we're partners with the SoCal REN, which is a county department that helps us with energy, like electricity and gas. We have water partners. So we have West Basin Municipal Water District, we have Torrance Water, we have Water Replenishment District, we have Waste, we have LA County Sanitation Districts, and then we also have LA County Metro. So those are all partners, and we bring them together and we do outreach to the communities. We go into the different cities and do outreach. We also help cities actually do municipal projects. And so some of the pictures that you see up there is an energy engineer actually going out to the city and helping them with facility improvements. And then We look for ways to also like report out to the city. So there's a lot of regulations for like building size with benchmarking and things like that. We try to take that burden off of the city staff and actually do those reports for you. So we try to be an extension of the city staff, and if any way that we can make their jobs easier and save your resource, that's really what we're trying to do.
So, and we do it for both, for cities, but we also do it for businesses. We have 3 cities. Actually, just for those of you that are not part of this, it's El Segundo, Hawthorne, and Torrance. And those cities were able to get money from the state to do business green
Certification.
certifications.
Yeah.
Those 3 cities gave their money to us because we have the network to do this, and we're working in those cities. We would love if any other city has that. They don't have the staff. Cities don't have the staff to do what we can do because we already have the staff. So if you have access to that state money, we hope that you'll look at it and we can go into your businesses and help them get certified for green. We also have over 100 events a year in the community, where if you're having some special event and you want a table there to talk about energy efficiency or water conservation or any of these issues, we'll be out there with a table. And we can only do that because we have volunteers. We have a wonderful volunteer network. And so if you also know people that would like to volunteer, there's dates on weekends that we ask our volunteers to help us. And for those volunteers that are, you know, nerdier maybe, we ask them to help us with data collection and things in the office. So we have some office volunteers, and we have some, which the whole volunteer program obviously has been on hiatus since COVID. But before COVID, we had over 25 active volunteers. So we're hoping to build our volunteer corps again because it isn't that big yet, but we still have those 100 events a year. And we, you know, if any of you would like us to be at an event, please let us know. This is a really important part of the COG's service delivery. And I should say one of the projects Kim is doing this year is the facility equipment inventory, where what happens is the genesis of this, I'm going to say this wrong probably.
Okay.
The genesis of this is that the utility companies decide they want to give a rebate on such and such. Well, maybe cities don't need that rebate. Maybe they need a rebate on something else. So Kim came up with this idea. Can you explain it?
Yeah, I was going to say, what we find is that the CPUC makes decisions based on market. And so that's not the same for cities. Like I've seen city staff go and have a machine shop and fix some air conditioning unit in the back. They're not replacing equipment because it's just very costly. And so I said, well, what can we do? How can we give the CPUC data of actually what the inventory is so that they can make good decisions about the resources that cities actually need? And so that's what we're trying to do. And so we are going to every single city and performing this and doing a real thorough audit of just the equipment. So it's an inventory. It's not like an audit, but it's an inventory of the equipment. So that's exciting.
And I think that it's important that we, I think we're known as an organization that relies on data. It's interesting, when I went to the Transportation Commission on the local travel network, the first comment I got after I stopped talking was, thank you for the data. Thank you for the hard facts. So I think that's really important to us. Next slide. Well, we have more recently, within the last 6 years, we've been doing senior services, and the county has recently funded us for homeless services. And Lori, do you want to talk about both of those?
Sure.
Lori Jacobs, and I'll fill in because I always do. Lori Jacobs works with Ronson Shu, who is our homeless project manager. And Lori works with Ronson.
Sure. So I guess start with that. We receive funding from Measure H, LA County money for innovation ideas addressing homelessness. And it could have been anything from housing, mental health, a homeless plan, depending on where the city was at. And so we're on our second round of the innovation funding, and the cities were very creative, and we've been nursing and helping them along with their projects. And in some cases, we only have so much bucket of money. And if we couldn't fund them, Ronson's been great in saying, you know what, we can't, but we know where you can get the funding. And he's got partnered with the county or other organizations. So we've never really had to say no to anybody's project. So it's great. And hopefully we'll get a third round of that. I'm looking at the slide. So obviously homelessness is a huge crisis everywhere and every city has their own issues. So it says tiny home shelters. You probably have heard about pallet shelters or tiny homes. That has been one of the most successful models for transitional or interim housing, because the congregate shelters, when they first came out with COVID, because it was such an emergency, that was fine, but now we're finding that's not really a good fit, especially for people who have mental health issues, putting them in a big room with each other. So these have been great. I'm a huge advocate of that. Homeless courts. So there's a homeless court in Redondo Beach, and we added Hermosa Beach last year. And in February, they should be ready to launch a homeless court in Torrance. And Redondo Beach, when they started theirs, they had pallet shelters and then they had the homeless court. So it was great. They could go from the homeless court, get some of their records expunged if they're following directions, and then they go into interim housing. And the success rate of getting them from that interim housing to permanent housing is really high. So Torrance is doing the same thing. They have 40 pilot shelters and now they'll have the homeless court. Employment assistance. We try to work with various groups. In fact, Bronson and I were on the call today with the South Bay Workforce Investment Board,
Right.
whatever, talking to them about, a huge problem is mental health. Not only do we not have enough mental health facilities, we don't have enough mental health and social workers and case managers for a lot of reasons, partly because the salary levels have not been great. So we're working to help we're partnering with them to develop programs for peer support specialists with on-the-job training so that we can get more people following these career paths. So hopefully when we get more mental health facilities, we have people to work in them. So there's that. Case management. So that goes along with it, getting more case managers. Somebody's been on the streets for a couple of years and you get them into housing. That's not the end of the story. They're not ready to adapt. So we need to have more resources there to continue to help people. Home Share South Bay, never heard of it. So I don't know how much detail you want me to go into. So
Just what it is.
okay. So it's a home sharing program and we consider this homelessness prevention. So this is more for people who are hitting financial reasons that they may become homeless. I am using the home sharing program. I am actually sharing a room with somebody else. It's been very successful for me. It was a financial decision and I'm not the homeowner. I'm actually renting out a room. And so this program can guide people through it. How can you, obviously older adults, we've focused on this, have concerns. How do I bring a stranger into my home? We walk you through the whole process, how to vet somebody and set up a contract, some type of agreement. So that program, especially now with eviction moratoriums and tenant rights becoming a huge issue, home sharing, it's a real challenge to get more homeowners to open up their homes. But as they're strapped to cover their bills, a lot of empty nesters, older adults, they're seeing, and loneliness bring somebody in. So I'm a huge advocate.
Before you go to senior services, I just want to mention that the things like the pallet shelters, the homeless court, we contribute money to that. And our major partner is the supervisors. They've been wonderful about coming to the table, but these are programs that have success. So that's really important. The Home Share South Bay is unique in the South Bay. The other unique thing in the South Bay, which that we do I don't think others are doing, is we actually, when someone is in need of shelter immediately, or even has a Section 8 voucher and can't get first and last month's rent because the county system takes too long, we have same day money that we've created. We have an account that I sign the checks and there's same day. We're housing 70% of the people in our program. And we think it's really successful because the other way of waiting is not working.
Thank you. I almost forgot client aid.
And so it turns out that yesterday we had I don't know if you know this, we had a conference call with Thesia Davenport, who is the head of the county, the CEO. And she explained, I guess, that the next tranche of funds is going to include something that looks like client aid. So they're actually taking our same day idea, because that's the only way it works. What's happening is somebody with a Section 8 voucher would have to wait 2 weeks to get first and last month's rent. Well, the landlord's going to want that. It should be available right then and there, the security deposit. And that's what we were doing. So we're really, if this works the way it looks like it might, we led the way, and we're really proud of that program as well. So, that's
Can
another.
I say that I got up out of the room to hand somebody a security deposit? They had to have, that's why I got up, somebody in Inglewood, and they were gonna lose the unit, and this person had been experiencing homelessness for a few years, and also application fees,
Right.
covering costs for documents, new social security card, DMV records, there's all, okay.
Yeah.
What's nice about this program is that it's so flexible, it's not just
Yeah, yeah.
when,
it's-
whatever is needed.
what's needed to move to the next step, to try
Right,
to
right.
really get them into a house. And then, and I should say that the magnitude of this is we get about, I think, 1.9 to $2 million from the county for a year, which we mostly give to all of our cities to do these other programs, but we save it for client aid, home share, that kind of stuff, some of it. Okay, do you want to talk about senior services really fast?
Oh, sure. Okay, senior services. We have a senior services working group and we meet every other month. Right now by Zoom, and we just try to bring speakers for each of these that relate to senior services. Yesterday, we had a couple of interesting programs with the PACE program through Wellbe Health, Medicare, Social Security, housing. There's all kinds of issues. We look to the people who attend it, tell us what subjects they would like to learn about. And really, we're trying to help everybody become more age friendly. AARP provides community grants. And that's like step one to it's quite a process to become age friendly, but give them ideas on how they can make their communities more age friendly, easier to travel, more park benches, you know, and everything that would improve quality of life for older adults.
And it turns out that nobody in this, but apparently people throughout the South Bay are aging. And
Did you say 60% of our population?
no, in the peninsula, it's over 25%.
25%
over
of
65.
Californians are now over 60. 25%.
25% are over 60. So we've had the senior services group for about 6 years. During COVID, we met regularly and talked about how do you take seniors who are lonely? What can the cities do? They shared best practices. It's been really effective. If you go to the senior services and the homeless task force, which meets every other month as well, we get the virtues of Zoom. We get over 50 people at those meetings. And from the social service agencies and the cities, and they're really, really very effective. So next slide. We're almost done, I think. Advocacy is really important. We obviously have a lot of opinions on the things we do. We took a strong position against SB 9 and 10 because of local control. We sort of have a position on any piece of legislation that if it's taking away local control, that's not what we're here for. We're here because cities were elected to represent their constituents. We have sponsored legislation. We did last year with the Housing Trust. We've done other legislation having to do with AQMD, and we're hoping to sponsor legislation again this year, which I'll get to. And then we have legislative briefings, which are quarterly. We invite legislative staff, but if the legislators in town or can join us by Zoom, they've been doing that. And they're pretty informative. Last week, was it? We had 2 weeks ago, Maxine Waters came, and she's always got a lot to say. Okay, next slide. Okay, so we're meeting with our legislators right now in the next couple of weeks to talk about new legislation. It is, what I forgot to say is it's the 20th anniversary of the South Bay.
Oh, 25.
25th, right?
25. I'm saying 25.
Okay.
It feels like 25.
20th anniversary of the South Bay Environmental Services Center. And it started off, with water conservation, energy conservation. Well, we're in 2023. We want to do energy walls. We want to do microgrids. We want to help our cities really, really get involved in renewables. And so and the state apparently has recently cut back on their funding for climate change. So we're saying, okay, cut back on your funding, but take some pocket change, which we think is about $2 million, and give it to us. And we will work with our cities on a strategy that brings them all of these newer ideas in how we can save energy and how we can create communities that are more sustainable. So we're meeting next week with Senator Allen, and we probably will be asking for letters of support for this. We don't know what kind of reception. We know there's a deficit, but we think that, as I said, with the state cutting back, this is a really great use of a small amount of money to carry on state goals, which is exactly what it's trying to do. Next slide. I mentioned this before, over 100 engagements a year. We have a monthly e-newsletter, and our e-blast, when you get it, goes to over 15,000 people. We have social media. We hope you'll use social media to retweet and Facebook all of our announcements. And this all gets done because of our funding partners and our volunteers. Next slide. These are our funding partners. Kim mentioned them, and each one of them is very, very important to us. Next slide. Our staff, we have a crazy mix of staff between contractors and employees. The green are contract staff. The blue are, no, I did that wrong.
Yeah, the green is
The
contract
green is
staff.
contract, the blue is contractors that contract directly with the Council of Governments. The yellow are employees, and Mike Jenkins, who is our attorney, works for us mostly pro bono. So we're really delighted that he has offered to do that. He's been doing that for 20 years probably. Next slide. Programs that we do that are funded through dues and general fund are just our meetings. A lot of the meetings we do, a lot of the senior programs we do, our General Assembly, which is coming up, which I forgot to put a slide in. March 23rd is our General Assembly, which is, we're getting speakers, and it's going to be a great event where we can not only network, but we also learn about, this one's going to be a lot about conflicting state goals, resilience and sustainability in the South Bay. We'll go into that more. Special projects. We're very big on, if you want to try, if there's an issue in your city that really bothers you, we'll bring experts here. For a year and a half, we met on coyotes. We also met on short-term rentals for about a year and a half, where we brought in guest speakers. We talked about solar, we talked about big data. We also do special forums. For example, no city in the South Bay has approved cannabis, but it's really important that we understand what's going on with cannabis. So we had two workshops, I think, 1 or 2 workshops on cannabis and what's going on. We haven't done that for a while, but we could. And if somebody says, you know, I'd really like to know more about this, but I don't want to go to Sacramento to figure it out or something, we'll try to bring a speaker here. Let's go on to the next slide. Dues, we always like to show this because dues pay for something like, what does it say, 8% of all of the things I mentioned to you. We leverage all of our grants and all of the funding we get from other sources. Next slide. Okay, the last thing I want to say before we go to questions is our General Assembly is also free, and it's free because we get sponsors, and we are now looking for sponsors. If someone wants to sponsor the General Assembly, if they give us $2,500 or more, they get a table and can exhibit. And we have an exhibit hall.
They would like to.
Yeah, we have an exhibit hall too. So that's it. You know, the COG is, doing a lot of work, and we're very, very proud of what we do. And we're hoping that you'll have questions and reactions to any of this. Anybody want to start or have anything to say? No?
It made you tired, right?
Yeah.
Unpacked a lot.
Yeah, no, it's an awful lot.
Yeah.
And if there's any recommendations on the presentation, let me know.
I'd certainly invite the new folks to ask any questions. It's all relatively familiar to me. My colleague Stacy Armato, who is our delegate from Hermosa Beach, is, I think, very active in a lot of things, including the Regional Housing Trust. So I'm familiar with a lot of what's there. I had a quick question, and this is probably more a question for the steering committee and eventually the board potentially, but South Bay Environmental Services Center, of which I'm a big fan, does it get involved, or can it get involved in things like helping the cities in the South Bay coordinate on publicizing the need to divert our organic waste through our waste haulers? So we all have these programs that we're rolling out with the third barrel. We have our waste haulers who are, I think, required to meet certain standards. So a lot of the onus for getting the word out to folks and understanding, as a practical matter, how you divert your waste without creating, a big mess, and how you do it efficiently. But just an exchange of information, just an added voice in terms of how we get those numbers up so people really understand that process and are able to take advantage of it. That's one. And another, small one that I emailed our environmental programs manager about the other day is some of the programs that AQMD has for funding. So it's everything from, I think, reimbursement for part of the cost of an electric vehicle charger, for example, which AQMD seems to have difficulty marketing, getting awareness about. But part of it too is one that is a small pet peeve of mine, but it's gas-powered leaf blowers. Like, I think in the city of Hermosa Beach, even our own landscaping company uses them still, even though they're not allowed to under our city ordinances. AQMD, for example, has a program that I think funds a substantial amount of the cost to replace gas-powered leaf blowers with electric leaf blowers. So it's little things like that I was wondering whether or not could come within the ambit of the Environmental Services Center in terms of helping the cities understand and tackle how we really get the numbers up of replacing gas-powered leaf blowers and getting people really into diverting their organic waste and stuff like that.
You're singing our song. About a year ago, we met with cities, we called them together. And we said, I don't know what to level, it was like the environmental people in the cities or whatever.
It was, yeah.
And we said, this bill is coming down the pike for organic waste. And although you have different trash collectors, there's a common message. And we could take that out to our 100 events. We could do all kinds of things. And the cities at the time, and I'm not casting aspersions, everybody's way overworked. They said, we're leaving this to the trash haulers. They got to do it. We're leaving it to them. So what we've done now is we've made one contact with Athens, but it would be so helpful if cities would say, we have a resource here for you. And Athens said that they understood we would need some funding to do this for our programs, but they haven't gotten back to us. It would be helpful if the cities would say to the waste haulers, you've got a resource here, give them, a couple of $1,000s or whatever, and they can market your issue. We can be at those events. We would love to do that.
Right.
We've been trying for a year to figure out how to do that. So any way you can help us would be wonderful. As far as the AQMD, we used to have someone who would come to our meetings. This is like a couple of years ago now, who talked about all of these programs, and they're not doing that anymore. And they're not even sending us reports, but do you want
I'm
to?
actually wondering if what we could do is contact the AQMD and see if we could do some neighborhood exchanges where we could go into the neighborhood and invite like the local gardeners, right? Because it's hard for them to even get there.
Right.
And do like a neighborhood exchange, like on a weekend or something, maybe at City Hall, and bring AQMD in and have them actually just do it in our communities. It's us. Let me reach out to them and see if we could do that.
These are the ideas that we would love to follow through.
Great. And call Doug Kraus, our environmental programs manager. Maybe we could do a case study with Hermosa Beach of converting our own merchants landscapers, which is our city's landscaping contractors, leaf blowers all over to electric through this AQMD program. And, then.
Is it a requirement of your subcontractors to the city?
I wish I knew the answer to that. I don't know the contract.
Maybe that
itself
might be
well
helpful
enough.
too. Yeah.
But I do know you're not allowed to use them. The irony is just, off the chart. But in any event, I just pinged Doug the other day when I got an email from AQMD about this, and I've pinged him about it in the past, but it's just, there's low-hanging fruit there with AQMD in terms of funding to move people towards more sustainability. And I think a lot of it doesn't get taken advantage of because AQMD doesn't market it as well as
They need to get into the community.
Those are great suggestions. Anybody else? Anybody on the screen want to say anything? No?
That was all very helpful, very clear. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we hope to work very closely with the City of LA because you've got, it's slightly different, but we want to, you're definitely a partner for us.
Thank you.
Very informative. Thank you.
Thank you.
Lots to digest.
Yes, yes. And I didn't say, because there's 100 things I probably didn't say, that we are connected to the city managers meetings. I go every month and meet with the city managers and hear what they're saying and tell them about the COG. I meet every other month with the park and recreation directors. We have a planning directors meeting where we talk about a lot of these REAP projects that I mentioned. We have a regular public works directors meeting, which we call the infrastructure working group, which does a lot of the Measure M and Measure R. So we meet with all the department
Facility
heads.
people.
Yeah, we facility people, energy management.
And climate action. So anybody that's working, usually that's community development.
Right, right. And we didn't mention also that we've done climate action plans for each of the cities, and right now we're in the process of inventory.
Yeah, we're updating the inventory. So we went to every city and helped them develop strategies and help them approve climate action plans. So all of our cities have climate action plans. Some of the beach cities were a little bit ahead of that curve, and so they did their own separate from our work, but we added chapters to their climate action plans for topics that they didn't have included. But now the first milestone year is 2020 for the greenhouse gas targets. And so we're working with Civic Spark Fellows, which is a state program, and they're like newly out of college and fantastic fellows doing the greenhouse gas updates. So we're looking at 2019 because 2020 was a weird year, and 2020, and going to report back to the cities on the status of your greenhouse gas reductions, which looks like you're actually getting reductions. So that's a good thing.
Okay, anything else? I
So
don't
many things.
We can, I guess we have food here, so if you. Thank you so much, and I hope you'll stay for the board meeting. Sergio, did you want to say anything? I know you came on camera at one point.
No, just, are you gonna have food delivered to us? No, but thank you. This was a lot of help. I had the opportunity to sit down with Jackie. And was it yesterday? I don't remember.
Yes, whenever.
And so went over a lot, but thank you, Jackie, for this briefing, and tells us a lot of what the great work that the COG does.
Thank you. Okay, everybody, thanks so much. There's food.
Help yourself, please.
Thank you.
A quick follow-up question on the Civic Spark Fellows work about report.